Welcome back to another episode of Marvel News Desk, the official podcast of MCU Exchange and the best place to keep up with all of your latest news, reviews, and speculation concerning the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This week we have the usual crew with us, Rhiannon and Adam and myself, and we're excited to talk to you guys about Marvel yet again. Our main discussion today is going to be that awesome Punisher trailer, but before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the news. So we have some more details about who's going to be in Avengers 4. So if you are very sensitive to those things, you may want to skip ahead with our timestamps. But we heard today that War Machine and Bucky are definitely back for Avengers 4. Sebastian Stan was talking about hanging out with Don Cheadle on set. Since these movies are so connected, are you guys nervous at all about like getting these? Like, are these spoilers to you? Do you wish that we didn't know about the casting of this movie? Or are you kind of okay knowing what's coming in Avengers 4?
I don't mind knowing who's coming. I mean, we have, like we've speculated a whole lot. It could be alternate universes. It can be, flashbacks. It can be all kinds of things. So knowing that somebody is going to be in 4 or 3 doesn't mean, I don't see it as a spoiler.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I saw that pop up on my Twitter feed. I'm like, oh man, I thought they were already I've lost track of who's in what movie, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps to remember that the Infinity Gauntlet storyline that we think some of this is taken from begins with Thanos killing literally half of the Marvel Universe. And like, there's a page like 6 pages into the comic where it's like, here's all the superheroes that have died, and it's very conveniently not any of them who are like major players. It's all like a bunch of X-Men and Puck and some other people. I want to say, maybe does Daredevil die at the beginning of Gauntlet? I don't think Daredevil actually fights Thanos. I want to say he's one of them they killed off at the beginning. But anyways, there's all these characters that they kill, and of course the thing is, he's got the Gauntlet, he can bring them back. It's sort of his offering up to death. And so I don't think it's a big deal when we find out people are in this, because as Rhiannon said, we don't know how they're in it. We don't know what he's doing with the Gauntlet. People being killed and being brought back to life. There's been people that made rumors that maybe Quicksilver is going to come back to life in this stuff. And so I don't think it's a thing to worry about. And we just have to get used to it, because there's no way that they logistically can film these movies without us knowing who's going to be in them. So it's just going to happen. Another piece of news, James Gunn did a Facebook Q&A the other day. I believe while he was waiting for a doctor, he like put on Facebook like, my doctor's taking a while, so I'll do a Q&A here in the waiting room. And so he was answering a lot of questions, and he was asked about Inhumans, and kind of oddly, he didn't deflect or say, I'm not really involved in that project. He kind of piled on top of them. It wasn't too egregious, but somebody asked him what he thought about it, and his response was, it does not look like there is much saving left for the Inhumans. Are you guys surprised that James Gunn made such a negative comment about a TV show, or is this where we're already at, that everyone just knows they can pick on this show?
I really wanted to have the time to go back and watch the Q&A and see how he said it. Like, if it was just like, I hear there's not much saving for the Inhumans, or if it was just like, there's nothing that'll save the Inhumans. But I thought it was very odd for him, because he is normally one to step away from a subject, or, he's ingrained enough not to say stuff that he shouldn't say. And as we've talked before, there's such a firewall between the television and the movies. I can't imagine he knows much about Inhumans. I don't think he has any inside knowledge that it's about to be canceled, or that it is canceled, or, that there's stuff going on. So it just really, that comment really did kind of shock me.
Likewise, yeah, I was very surprised to see him say something like that. Like Rhiannon said, I mean, he's usually one to shy away and kind of play politically correct a bit. And I think I'm not sure. I think it was, he typed it out in the comments or something. So, I mean, it's hard to tell, the tone and things like that. But yeah, I was very surprised to see Gunn say something like that.
I do wonder if it'd be interesting to see if, we'll never know. I wonder if he's at all frustrated by it. Like, I don't think that James Gunn was like planning Inhumans as his next movie after the Guardians trilogy. But I think it's possible as like, Cosmic Feige or whatever we're calling him, that he had some thought about them. I don't know, like between War of Kings or like one of these like intergalactic war storylines that the Inhumans have been involved in. It would not surprise me if he had a thought in the back of his head for a cool scene with Gorgon or something like that in the cosmic MCU. That he's now like very aware, like that's not available to me. Because as much as I don't think he's involved in TV, he has a like seemingly encyclopedic knowledge about what characters belong at Fox, what characters belong at Marvel, and everything in between. And so I am sure that he somewhere has a database of characters he thought he might use someday, and he's had to go through there and knock off Karnak, Gorgon, Black Bolt, Medusa, etc. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he's a little bummed by it, that maybe he had a cool idea for something in the future that now he can't do.
Yeah, and I wrote up that article for the MC Exchange, and the thing about it to me is anytime that we've talked about Scott Buck and the forbidden grounded word that he throws around, I've always thrown out what James Gunn does as proof that that's just wrong. That things don't need to be grounded, that you can do some fantastic things and make it outlandish and still make it very relatable. So it kind of gave me some comfort to know that Gunn was frustrated with, to think at least that Gunn might be frustrated with that direction as well.
Yeah. I think if nothing else, he probably, I don't know, sometimes you talk to these like movie directors or these people high up in Marvel Studios, and they almost have the opinion, like they almost play like, I'm just so busy I don't have time to watch anything else. I bet James Gunn has peaked at this. I think he loves this stuff enough that it would not surprise me if he makes sure that he like sees these things early on anyways to get a feel for what they are. But maybe I'm wrong. But I wouldn't be surprised if he did. So we have some Runaways news. Apparently Brian K. Vaughan was doing some book signings recently. And Vaughan is one of the creators, the writer of the original Runaways series. I think he's done some work on the show as well. And apparently he told someone at a book signing, the Old Lace, I don't know if it's a raptor, but the dinosaur is definitely in the show, and it's pretty good. Are you guys, this show's kind of been under the radar, but it's exciting to hear that they're not shying away. They're not trying to ground the Runaways by putting no dinosaur in it, right?
Well, and in Inhumans' defense, Lockjaw is one of the best things about that series. So evidently Marvel Television is doing a great job at its CGI animals.
Except for dragons.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, except for dragons. We get dragon bones, just not dragons.
Okay. Yeah. The ones that they give us, they do a fantastic job.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, there was a point where we were all buried in Scott Buck negativity and worried that Marvel Television would try to ground Runaways and somehow not do Old Lace or, hint at Old Lace or just, not make her the feature that she needs to be. So I'm really glad to know that she is going to be there and hopefully fantastic.
It does kind of beg the question, not to get stuck on this Runaway negativity train, but if they can handle a velociraptor, why was a dragon so hard for Iron Fist? In all seriousness, it's kind of a joke, but I'm actually wondering, like, I've sort of given Scott Buck a pass, thinking that he just didn't have the budget for dragons. Mm-hmm. But maybe it's Iron Fist, like, artistically chose not to have a dragon. I just think if you can do Old Lace, you should be able to do Xiao Lao, but maybe that's just me. Adam, do you want to grump about this?
Caleb, I ask myself that question every morning. It's the first thing I ask when I wake up. I mean, why can't we have a dragon? Nah, but I mean, yeah, I think it does come down to some artistic choices. I mean, Lockjaw looks pretty good for Inhumans. Obviously, we haven't seen Old Lace yet, but I mean, if they're doing these two animals, there's not really a reason not to, unless the Netflix budgets are that much less. But one would think it's comparable to a Hulu show. Season 2. Let's go. We'll get Xiao Lao in season 2, maybe.
Okay, counter argument here, though. Both of those characters, Lockjaw and Old Lace, are characters in the show. I mean, they're ones that are in, like, multiple... they're not a one-shot viewing. So maybe it's worth it to go to the effort to create the CGI character and put the technology in. Whereas one episode, a dragon that shows up in one instance... he's not a character. It's not going to be something that shows up repeatedly in the series. Maybe it's just not worth it to do all of the CGI setup.
Yeah, I think that's legit. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert in how they do these things, but I get the sense that the character build and like creating the model is kind of the expensive part. And then once you have it, you can kind of just use what you already have and move around limbs and stuff and make it do different things. So I can see where Lockjaw is something you can use dozens of times in a season, whereas it would be just, for one big glorious scene for the dragon. So I guess that makes sense to me. Adam's like, no, we're just making excuses. It's just excuse making.
You totally read my mind. I mean, instead of having Danny say, every other scene, I'm Danny Rand, the immortal Iron Fist, he could just say, hey, I'm Danny Rand, I killed Xiao Lao, and it just, like, give a flashback to him punching the dragon. I mean, just the little things like that. But I hold out hope that we will see a dragon. I know the hope's not going to go anywhere, but you got to have little hope, right?
Well, and when Rhiannon kept saying, when she said, it's a thing you could only use once, you wouldn't show it over and over and over again, I was thinking, how many minutes of Iron Fist would I have replaced with a replay of a dragon fight? Like, just trying to calculate how many scenes I would scratch just to see that over and over again.
Episodes 7 through 13.
Well, and that's where, like, as I said it, I was like, okay, I know people wanted to see the dragon in more than just one instance. I know there's, like, 5 different places where that dragon could have shown up, but... And I think there's also on that side, I think there was miscommunication between what Netflix wanted and the creative vision, how the creatives interpreted that. But new showrunner next season, maybe they'll have better creativity.
Yeah, that is a really good point. We see Daredevil and we see Jessica Jones and we see Luke Cage, and they're all pretty much strictly street level characters, and then out of nowhere getting a dragon wouldn't really make that much sense, even though it is the biggest part of the character's mythos. But hey, I understand. Well,
it's really weird to me, though, because I agree with that, but that is what I felt the afternoon in 2014 or whatever that I heard that they were doing these shows.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Daredevil and Luke Cage? Okay, and Jessica Jones, I had to Google. But after I Googled her, I was like, oh, okay, that fits. And then I was like, Iron Fist? They're gonna, it's... Yeah. I kind of get where those characters have meshed in the MCU, or in the Marvel Comics universe, but that's because there's a certain mysticism in Daredevil that is not necessarily in the way they made Daredevil. But anyway, I think we're getting into a broken record at this point in this. So, speaking of Netflix and the Defenders, one of these companies that claims that they use data based on like eavesdropping on people's cell phones or something has claimed that Defenders is the least watched show of the Marvel Netflix shows. Do you guys believe this, or is this just phony data?
I believe it. I mean, well, one, this is that same data source that like listens to people's cell phones and stuff.
I think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked before. I don't put a whole lot of faith in that because that seems like such a very small population. But I do, I know lots of people that have, peripherally been interested in this series, and Defenders premiering prompted them to start watching all of them. They hadn't started watching any of the series. So I think 2 years down the road, Defenders might have the most views, but there's a lot of people catching up.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, 4 seasons of shows you have to watch before you even kind of start understanding what the heck's going on in Defenders. So it is a lot of TV to watch. I did find the Defenders a lot easier to rewatch, though. I'm not sure if that's just because it was 8 episodes, but it might be. But I thought it was an easier one to sit through and rewatch to me over the solo shows.
I think it's Joseph on our site had mentioned in our internal conversations just that TV shows always have lower ratings. Like it's very rare that a TV show by its 4th or 5th season is getting more popular. Like every once in a while there's a really big hit show that was a sleeper. Like I'm sure Seinfeld grew for 4 or 5 years and then started to taper. But with as big as Daredevil and Jessica Jones were, it may be asking for like a suspension of TV physics, if that's the way to put it, to expect that the 6th Marvel TV show is going to be better watched than the first one. Like there is just a natural thing of, oh, I never got into that. Oh, that's a lot to catch up on. Like I think naturally that's in people's minds. And so it makes sense to me that these shows will have some sort of diminishing returns unless they can make kind of niches that, just kind of grab new audiences somewhere. But yeah, it strikes me as natural that that's going to happen. All right. There has been rumors that we're going to get an Infinity War trailer on September 29th, maybe attached to Inhumans to get people to watch Inhumans on ABC. Do you guys believe this at all, or is this probably total baloney?
I have no idea. Didn't we hear Spider-Man after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. rumors for months last year? That there was going to be was it Thor? Because there were rumors forever that at the end of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. there was going to be that big trailer, to the point that we just kind of wondered if they were putting that rumor out to increase ratings. Which would definitely be true for Inhumans at this point. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen, but I'm not holding my breath.
Well, there was also that weird situation where the actress who plays Yo-Yo had put out like a really cryptic tweet about a big reveal coming, and everybody thought it was the Spider-Man trailer, and instead it was that slingshot like 7-minute long miniseries on the internet, and everyone's like, really? That's what you got hyped about? I remember that being a deal too.
Yeah. She, in her defense, she did pretty quickly like come back and be like, no, it's not Spider-Man. Sorry, didn't mean to start rumors.
I mean, we have talked internally. I know a lot of us are big believers in kind of attaching it to these huge, large sporting events, how they attach Black Panther to the NBA Finals and stuff. So, I mean, I think most people were anticipating it dropping sometime in October. I'm not sure, I guess, the reasoning for it, if it's New York Comic Con or, I mean, if they wanted to do something with the World Series or something of that nature, but I don't think they would. I don't think they're obliged to attach it to Inhumans. I mean, don't get me wrong, it would boost ratings through the roof probably for at least until through the first commercial break or whenever they show it. But yeah, I think it'll probably end up coming sometime in October, which heck's only a week away anyways.
And that's a good point. I think Marvel Studios is more after airing it somewhere that it'll get them the highest viewership of the trailer, and not so much airing it somewhere that it'll increase the actual viewership of the TV show. So we're more likely to see it in a big Sunday Night Football situation, a Monday Night Football situation, or something big. I know you guys were talking that last year was like the college ACC football championships. Something big like that. They're looking to, they're looking after them. They're not looking after the television side of things.
Yeah, it seems like they want something that's going to be mutually beneficial, right? Where it might do a little help to whatever it's attached to, but it's also a big platform to begin with. And I don't think Inhumans is going to be a big platform to begin with. So this is really nerdy, but I actually have a spreadsheet with when all the trailers came out for different movies. And if you're curious, historically speaking, as far as May releases, the first trailer for Guardians 2 came out on December 3rd. The first trailer for Captain America Civil War came out November 24th. The first trailer for Avengers Age of Ultron came out October 22nd. The first one for Captain America Winter Soldier, which was an April release, was October 25th. Iron Man 3 came out October 23rd, and Avengers came out October 11th. So, yeah, October and November is a pretty safe guess. Guardians being the one that was held back, and I'm guessing because that had lots of special effects stuff that had to be done, so. And yes, I do just happen to have that spreadsheet available on my computer at any given moment.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Just some other little news things, nothing all that big. We got our first picks of Ant-Man and Walter Goggins this week from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Brie Larson appears to have shown up on set to do some of her Avengers 4 stuff. We continue to get little bits here and there about Thor Ragnarok, nothing particularly interesting. Benedict Cumberbatch was just saying that Avengers Infinity War will be really exciting. Finn Jones has started his training for Iron Fist Season 2, which I believe will start filming, we think, in November. It does feel like we have not a whole lot of news right now. Like, it has been a very quiet week, it seems. It was quiet except for one thing, and that is the Punisher trailer. It feels like that trailer just took over. I was talking to a friend at church today, and in the middle of the church service, he looked at me and he goes, "Did you see the Punisher trailer?" So, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. People have really gotten excited about it. Adam Rhiannon, just go ahead and jump in, like, first thoughts, kind of general impressions of when you saw this, kind of our first full look at this TV show.
I was blown away. I mean, I was messaging you guys as I watched. I mean, I was stopping midway through it and being like,
Yes.
"Oh my God, did they just do that?" And I didn't expect to feel that way when this first trailer came out. You know, that first teaser, I was pretty apathetic. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know we previously talked, and I mean, I'm not sure what it was with the first teaser. I'm not sure if it was just because it was like I just got done watching the whole season right in a row of Defenders, and I was just worn out, and I didn't like it, but it was underwhelming. But this trailer that dropped this week, I mean, that blew my expectations. You know, it looks very, very, very good. And I'm on the Frank Castle train now. It looks exciting.
Yeah, I think what really got me was the very first scene with his wife. Like, I had heard about the guitar thing from Comic-Con or whatever. And so I was like, okay, I heard about this. Yeah, he's got his daughter. He's playing guitar. Okay. And then she's like, we'll have all the time now that you're home. And I'm like, oh, yeah, ironic sadness. And then all of a sudden, like, she just gets shot. And I was like, oh, where did that come from? You know, like, I mean, just like it seems like a silly expression, like took my breath away. But like, I literally all of a sudden was like, like I kind of gasped in air because I was not seeing that coming. And it just doesn't let up. Like, it was just kind of a continual thrill ride from there. And so this week I actually watched some people and websites and blogs and stuff do reaction videos to trailers where they watch the trailer and then they take video of themselves watching it. I watched like 2 or 3 of those because I enjoyed the trailer so much that I had a blast watching other people watch it for the first time. You know, just like seeing people gasp and like no way, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it just seems like it was really well put together. Rhiannon, you talked a little bit you kind of did a trailer breakdown for us. They really made some good decisions with music and editing on this trailer. Just, do you want to share a few of your thoughts that you kind of had immediately about music choice and all that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, and you guys know how much I was freaking out that the choice of Metallica 1 for this trailer. The moment I realized that that's what that melody was, and the moment I realized it was when the machine guns came in as the drum solo, or that's when some people realized it. I didn't quite at that point. At that point, I couldn't tell if they had gotten some other piece of music that was an homage to Metallica's one, or if they were just trying to make it feel like that, or if they had gotten the actual song. So when I realized that that was the actual song, I was just completely freaking out. So for those that aren't familiar with this song, it is based on a story of a soldier from World War One. There's a song there's a movie and a book called Johnny Got His Gun, and it's a World War One soldier who, and I might be butchering this. I haven't actually read the book, but I've heard lots of people talk about it and stuff. I believe the man got his arms and legs blown off, or they had to be amputated, and he had damage to his face. He had just completely just a vessel left, and they were keeping him alive, and he started communicating via Morse code. And Johnny Got Your Gun is considered a big anti-war book, but that song, it's just, I cannot live, I cannot die, stuck in myself, living this life in hell. And to apply that to Frank Castle, who has come home from war and had everything that he was living for taken from him, I thought it was a very brave choice. I thought it was a very bold choice to use that song, because that song, people know what it's about. And especially soldiers and, folks that you would expect to be interested in Punisher know what that song is about. So to take that and say that that is what you're applying to Frank Castle, I'm not sure yet what their message... Yeah, I mean, like, obviously their message is, he's stuck in this place emotionally. I haven't had a chance to see, like, how that's been received by everybody. I expected to see a little bit of backlash, and I haven't seen that. So I just thought it was a very brave and bold choice, which I've said about 4 times now. But
yeah, I think the thing that stuck out to me, so with the main 4 defenders, they've kind of done this thing where they've used color and music to a degree to kind of shape an individual tone for a show. I think they've actually been really smart about trying to make each of the shows feel different. And they did it they continued it in Defenders, and they've actually done it so much now that it almost feels a little forced. Like we talked about in Defenders, like it was all of a sudden there was a scene where everything was yellow and there was hip hop music, and it was like, oh, that must be a Luke Cage scene, But I think they've been smart to try to create unique identities for each of the shows, so it doesn't feel like you're seeing the same program over and over again. And I think the choice to go into kind of heavy metal music, I think it fits with Frank. I think it fits with the audience that might be excited about this. And I think it's just really smart. Like, it's moving into a different musical idiom than any of the other Netflix shows. And it just communicates, hey, you're watching something else. You're watching something different. This is not the jazzy noir music of Jessica Jones. This is not the Wu-Tang stuff that we saw in Luke Cage. This is a different character from a different place with a different feel. And the music has the aggression that you would expect for Punisher. I mean, all of those things. This is where, it's part of the editing process. And you can think about music as just like slapping something on, noise onto a show, but it's not. Like, it can communicate something real. We've seen that with Guardians. Like, James Gunn works really hard with what he puts in it. And I think that this was a very intentional choice that, in addition to all the story elements that you mentioned, also just as a tone say, hey, this is not your average MCU Netflix show. This is something different. And I think that's what people are excited about, is I think that this stuff started to feel a little samey, and now it feels different. You have any thoughts on any of that stuff, Adam?
No, I mean, you guys are pretty much hitting the nail on the head there. I love the song choice. They even started syncing up the weapons to it and all that stuff. I thought that was a really cool touch. And like you said, with the Gun and Guardians, I mean, we've seen songs can make or break a scene, and the Defenders, the last underground fight scene, there was this really misplaced hip-hop song. I can't remember who sings it or what the song is, but it just didn't make sense, the song, and it for me at least, it threw the entire scene off. So I guess that's my little spiel on music.
I feel like this has come at a really good time for Marvel TV. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, right, on our podcast, we were asking the question, has Jeff Loeb lost his touch? And we were starting to question after the Defenders if this Netflix thing had more life in it or if it was starting to lag a little bit. And I just feel like the combination of this plus the reviews we're seeing out of Runaways, the timing could not have been better for Loeb and company as far as kind of re-injecting interest into Marvel TV, particularly with both Defenders and Inhumans kind of having really middling responses and people just kind of being down on Marvel TV just 4 weeks ago. Right? Like, I mean, this is a really good timing, I feel like, for Netflix. Do you think so?
Definitely. I definitely. I mean, that is not letting Loeb off the hook if I get to talk to him at New York Comic Con. But I am so ready for him. But yeah, the good press for the Netflix side of things. And it does feel fresh. I mean, that's one thing, like you were saying, some of the series, okay, the Defenders is another Defender. Okay, it's, I'm starting to worry that we may not be able to get hyped up when it's time to do Daredevil season 3. But this feels fresh. This feels exciting.
Getting back to the actual content of the trailer, we see a little bit of some flashback stuff. We see the CIA stuff. We're introduced to Micro. Is there any particular elements of the story here that kind of has you excited? Was there something about... was it just an emotional reaction to the trailer, or are there story elements that you're starting to get really curious now and you want to see more of as the show goes on?
I'm getting more curious about story elements, but I have to say my reaction was far more the emotional side than the story side.
It does seem a little bit interesting. So it's kind of espionage-y type stuff. I mean, it seems like he's going up against the government's the bad guys, so that's going to be kind of really interesting timing with everything that's going on. But I mean, I think the actor that plays Micro is pretty good, at least the 3-4 seconds we saw of him, but I'm looking forward to it.
This might be a very nuanced way to talk about it, but I feel like there's a difference between a spy thriller and a revenge movie. And I think that it's really easy to do Punisher as a revenge story where it's all about someone who's been wronged and he wants to, get back at people for his family. And I think it's really easy to drip it in those things. And I think that doesn't make Frank as sympathetic, particularly because there was some level of catharsis on that in Daredevil season 2. And I think a lot of us had that worry coming into this of, oh, okay, so this is going to be Frank on the warpath again to go kill a bunch of people for the thing that he killed a bunch of people last time. And it was just kind of this cycle of violence where he starts to become a not likable character if he can't at some point find some sort of peace or let it go, or if no amount of blood is enough blood for him. And so I think adding in these espionage, government, CIA secrets, Snowden kind of stuff. I think that adds layers that are really helpful to his character. That's going to make it easier for people to get behind him instead of just feeling like, oh, here's this, like all of us have bad stuff that happen in our lives and we don't go kill people because of it. So I think it's really makes him more sympathetic if he's actually protecting somebody from something,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask this question. So I feel like this is a show where my perception of the show has changed a lot. When it first came out that they were going to make this show, it seemed kind of inevitable, but I wasn't all that interested in it. I mean, if you listen back to our podcast over the last year, you've heard a lot of times where I think all three of us have kind of said, it's fine, whatever. And now all of a sudden this trailer comes, and I feel like I want to see this so much more than I want to see almost anything else coming out of Marvel. Can you think of a show or a property or a movie or whatever so far in the MCU where you've had this much of a turnaround? Where you like really went from being super excited to not, or like in this case, where you went for something you were not excited to something you were hyped about? Or is this kind of the first time that marketing has kind of changed your mind this much?
I actually kind of feel this way over all the properties until we really see what they are. I felt this way definitely about Thor Ragnarok. It was just something on the schedule, okay, whatever. And then when we got that first trailer, it was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's definitely something I'm looking forward to now. So it's kind of just my MO at this point.
Yeah, I have to go with the same exact movie. The first two Thor movies are probably two of my least favorite in the entire MCU. So once that first teaser trailer dropped, I was like, whoa, we're actually going to get something different. So, I mean, in terms of me flipping from completely not hyped to hyped, I mean, I would probably put Punisher and Ragnarok kind of up there. I wasn't too hyped about the Guardians, but I mean the Thor Ragnarok and Punisher trailers by far is the most I flip-flopped, I guess you can say.
I think that's a good comparison, actually. The first Guardians, I had never read Guardians comics before I saw the trailer for the first Guardians movie. I did not know who the characters were. I thought there was some kind of talking animal, but I just didn't know. And so when they announced it and they started working on it, I was like, okay, fine. I mean, they make good movies. I'm sure this will be great. And then when that first, it was really with the first poster where they had the poster of the team. And then the tagline at the bottom was, "You're welcome." And I was like, well, that's kind of like gutsy, like, okay, what's that about? Yeah. And then they did that first trailer and I was laughing so hard. And I was like, okay, this is something we need. Like, I didn't know I needed this stuff a little deconstructed at this point, but I did. And the fact that they went there, that first Guardians movie was definitely not something I was looking forward to until I saw the trailer, and it really changed my mind. So let's talk about release date. This is the other big news thing that we didn't talk about in the news. I thought I'd save it for now. This show has been very cryptic, very purposefully. Every time they do a trailer, they kind of block out the date, like, ooh, you don't know when it's coming. And we've talked about maybe them kind of doing the Beyonce thing where they just drop it all of a sudden. There's been talk about maybe doing it on Veterans Day in November. And then it was, I guess, Total Film Magazine that gave an October 13th date. Rhiannon, I know that you love talking about Netflix release schedules. It's almost like this is the most torturous of them all. They don't even tell you 6 weeks ahead of time what's going on. Do you have thoughts about when this is really coming out? Do you believe that October 13th date?
Well, I mean, that October 13th date seems like a very legit... It's Friday the 13th. That seems like a pretty cool day for Frank Castle. If they're not going to release Stranger Things on October Friday the 13th, then Punisher seems like a good option. But, I mean, the fact that that was in print in a magazine, to me, that has a lot of legitimacy. Now, I have seen that there's some article, some website posted an article that, you know, somebody with sources has debunked it because they talked to somebody with Punisher, and they hint that it's an actor. So, yes, we had a source close to Punisher that gave us a date in November. And that doesn't mean that Netflix didn't change their mind. That the November date that we published as November 14th, which was a Tuesday, so, you know, who knows? Maybe they could drop it on a Tuesday at this point. But that date has been floating around a while and could easily have been changed. And it's not like they really notify the cast that much of that sort of change, unless there's premiere and stuff, you know, unless they're trying to get the cast all together to be there for the premiere, in which case they really would be aware of the exact premiere date as it changed. I think anything is likely at this point. You know, I expect it to be out before December, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is October 13th. I wouldn't be surprised if they wait until New York Comic Con the week before to confirm that it's coming out October 13th. But yeah, at this point, let's just wait and see. I mean, who knows? By the time you listen to this podcast, it might be confirmed in some way. Though I do have to say, with all of this build up, I feel like there needs to be something really big about the reveal. You know, what are they holding it for? Are they planning something major? Are they going to have something happen to connect this reveal?
No, you know, I'm kind of with both of you guys. They're hiding the release date for a reason, so I'm not sure what that reason is, if they're still trying to determine it, or if, like Rhiannon said, that they're planning something just absolutely huge. You know, it wouldn't surprise me that come New York Comic Con, how long is the panel? The Punisher, is it an hour-long panel, or is it's
90 minutes. We're getting the first episode.
Yeah, so, I mean, they could show the first episode and say, hey, we're dropping it on Netflix right now. You know, something like that. I don't know. It just seems odd that they're purposely hiding the release date for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of questions that I want answers to. I mean, I wonder what kind of a press tour they do with this stuff. I mean, I'm trying to remember. I know Luke Cage, they sent a bunch of people to San Diego Comic-Con, but I don't feel like they do as much like late night TV shows and stuff.
They do. They'll do.
Do they do some TV. Of that? Okay.
Yeah. They'll do late night TV. They'll do press junkets. They'll do an international tour. I mean, there'll be a worldwide press tour for Punisher, just like there have been all the other shows. But they don't always do it before their premiere. I mean, that's the thing. They don't mind waiting and the press tour happening when folks can say, okay, and now you can watch it on Netflix immediately.
I feel like it definitely isn't coming before New York, because I feel like the New York Comic Con is an opportunity for them to really build the hype. So I don't think they go before that. After that, I mean, I don't know. I think you did say something helpful, Rhiannon, in that if this show is done, which I think it is, because it's wrapped quite some time ago. I would think it's not super effect laden compared to like even Stranger Things or something like that. And so I'm assuming they've got it, they have it in the can. And so, I don't know. I think about like with albums, sometimes an album starts to leak to the pirated community. And so all of a sudden they just drop it because they're, behind the eight ball. That's obviously not the case here. But I could see them being in a place where they're like, we wanted to do this in November, but the response to this is so awesome. We could just let's strike while the iron is hot. If people are this excited, let's go ahead. And they're kind of just picking their spots. The other thing I don't know is Stranger Things 2 comes out on, I believe, the 30th of October.
It's the Tuesday before Halloween.
Oh, it's
the Friday. Sorry, the Friday before Halloween. Halloween is on a Tuesday, so it's like the 28th.
Right. I just don't know how much they care about providing show space. like, given how excited people are about Punisher, do they want to have only a 2-week lead in to Stranger Things, or do they want to give a little more space to that? Do they want to say Punisher for after it? Like, I have no idea, because they're not a traditional network, how they think about the programming, if they would even think about Stranger Things and Punisher as being even in the same world, or if they're just so different they don't care. Like, these are things I have no answers to, but I feel like would affect all of this decisions about when they drop it, you know?
Well, I spent some time this week looking at the Netflix release schedule for the rest of 2017. And one, Netflix has way too many originals to care about crowding. They have something coming out all the time, and even though Punisher is really big and Stranger Things is really big, I think 2 weeks is all they could afford to give between two series of this size. So I don't feel like, whether it's 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after, I don't feel like that's prohibitive for them. They have a lot of things coming out in 2017 that don't have a date assigned to them yet either. So I don't know if Netflix still has, there's not fall TCAs, are there? There's just summer and winter. I don't know if Netflix has some sort of event coming up where they're going to do some big schedule announcement. But there were a lot of things on their list that say 2017 and didn't have a specific release date, which seems odd to me with 2017 being so done. But yeah, they finished filming Punisher around the same time they finished filming Defenders. So as far as post-production and everything, it's done. But I think they know the date. They're just playing everything out.
Yeah, the only other thing I can think of, I'm sure they'll have a quarterly earnings call for like the investors in Netflix. And I know sometimes things are revealed at those kind of investor calls. So I don't know if they'll come out, I assume that's in October. I don't know how Netflix does their fiscal years and stuff, but I would assume that there'll be a quarterly, shareholder call coming up here in 2 or 3 weeks where they could reveal a bunch of dates for that stuff too. So
if they are dragging this out for a shareholder call, I'm going to riot.
DC, Warner Brothers famously, like Marvel had that big event at the Capitan Theater, and they talk about all these movies. I remember DC once revealed like 6 movies on their slate, and it was on a shareholder call. It was like the news got like leaked through from like somebody on their board that's like, oh yeah, they announced 6 movies to us today. And I was like, that's the place that you're going to announce these things? But all right, before we wrap it up, any other Punisher any other Punisher thoughts?
I do. Okay, so just the one last thing from the trailer is Punisher's little moment where he's like, one condition, I get to kill everybody. I just really liked that shout out to Daredevil. Just sort of like, hey, in case you didn't know, this show's completely different than that one. I thought that was a little slick little homage to Daredevil's one condition. And it made me happy.
Yeah, right. Because I forget, at some point Matt says something like, he tells Elektra, right, that we can work together, but my one condition is no one dies, right?
Yeah, that's always his one condition. I think he might have done it with Stick. And no emotional conflict there. And also that just like gave us our little intro to Micro, Yeah, I'm cool with everybody dying. No big deal.
All right, we're going to get to the mailbag. We don't have quite as much this week. So I've been thinking about this. We try in the mailbag to read most of the comments that come in, and we try to read them kind of regardless. But we tend to not like to read mail that seems to be giving attention to people who are desiring attention. So I'm going to say something real quick, and then we're going to go on to the mailbag. I am very thankful for all the wonderful books at Marvel Comics. And in particularly, I'm very thankful for books like Miss Marvel, which does an incredible job of telling the story of a Pakistani young woman who is trying to grow up with her faith and her family and a new culture. And even though I don't share her gender or ethnicity or her religion, I feel hear some of my own life in the tension she has. And I think that's a really beautiful book. And I think you should read Miss Marvel. I think it's consistently one of the best things that's written every month. And I think some of the Jane Foster stuff has been awesome on Thor. And I love reading Champions. I read an issue of Champions recently that was talking about some really prevalent issues in our culture. And I'm not ashamed to say, like, I teared up a little bit because I thought they did a really beautiful job. I was kind of bored of Spider-Man until I started reading Miles Morales. And nowadays, I don't read any Peter Parker books, but I read Miles Morales because I think those are some of the best written Spider-Man books that I've seen in a really long time. And so all of those characters and their awesome diversity and the way that they're giving new stories to new people is something that I think Marvel does really beautifully. And I think as a podcast, the other two agree with me. And so kudos to Marvel for doing that, and we're excited about it. And it's one of the reasons we love Marvel Comics is even from the early days, Stan and the others stood up for people who were different and people who looked or sounded or came from backgrounds other than just the usual. And so that's awesome, and it's a reason we love Marvel, and I'm super excited about seeing those characters in the MCU. And that is, I think, what I'm going to say. Does that sound all right, Adam and Rhiannon?
Amen, man.
Beautiful.
Amen.
Beautiful.
All right. As to the rest of the mailbag, Chris on the website talked about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he was saying the only thing, he's talking about Punisher, and the only thing he really needs is for Micro to somehow connect to Daisy and her hacking friends. I had forgotten this, but apparently on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., she mentions Micro at some point. She, like, name drops him when she was still doing hacking. Do you guys remember this?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing he wants, and that would be really cool. Like, Netflix could do much to make our hearts happy if he just referenced that group of hackers whose name I've already forgotten. What was she part of? I want to say Black Sky, but that's not right.
I don't remember.
Well, there you go. It was very memorable, but yes, whatever group that was that Sky was part of. Dave on the website was talking about how he'd love to see a Secret Wars concept to kind of relaunch things and maybe even bring in Fantastic Four and X-Men. Preto was saying that he doesn't think we'll see any big announcements for Phase 4 because they had to reshuffle so much on Phase 3. I can see that, but I think when you look back at it, they really have not reshuffled that much at Marvel. Almost everything that was announced way back in 2014 has happened, and half of it has happened when they said it would, and the other half was just pushed back 3 or 4 months. So it's pretty amazing how much of that still has been done. But I can see that it's like that. I think they don't like announcing things and moving it in humans. Swan Pride on YouTube. We're talking about whether or not Hawkeye is called Hawkeye on the show or in the movies, and Swan Pride mentioned that it's actually Selvig. Nick Fury comes in at the beginning of Avengers and says, "Is Barton here?" And Selvig goes, "Yes, Hawkeye's up over there," and he's like on a lookout spot. So I think that is the first time he's called Hawkeye. And then Cash Craig over on SoundCloud was just commenting on how even though the Emmys and the Oscars don't give as much love to the MCU as we would like, that we shouldn't forget that Jessica Jones won both a Peabody and a Hugo Award, which are very prestigious awards in their own right. And I think that particularly that Peabody is very well deserved by Jessica Jones. So that's all I've got for the mailbag. Do you guys have anything else you want to say before we wrap the show up?
No. You can get in touch with us on the Twitter. I'm Shada Patron.
And I'm at Adam Barnhart, BarnHardt, and we're pretty interactive, no matter what you guys think of us. So hit us up, follow us, and Caleb still needs to break 50 followers, I think.
Yeah, at Caleb A. Borchers. You can follow us there. You also can follow the pod at Marvel News Desk. Sending us messages or tweets via @MarvelNewsDesk is also the best way for us to get your mail. That being said, I'm just realizing right now that I didn't check the Twitter this week. So if you send in something via Twitter, I'm sorry. I just didn't do my job well. Thanks for listening to the podcast. As I said, Twitter @MarvelNewsDesk is usually the best way to communicate with us. You can also send us messages via SoundCloud or the MCU Exchange posts that happen every Monday morning. If you want to help our show out and help other people find it, give us a 5-star review on iTunes. But the number one biggest thing that you do every week is that you listen and you tell your friends. And we know you guys are doing that because last week looks like the biggest week we've ever had as far as listens. So we were really appreciative, guys. Thanks to Tim Cox for our icon. You can find him on Instagram @TimVCox. And thanks to Alvin for our theme music. You can find him at The Skull School. I think that does it for this week. Next week we will be back and we will start doing reviews of Inhumans. We probably won't review it a ton since we already did the IMAX version. But we'll get to see Adam's heartfelt feelings on that show. And that'll start our weekly reviews of Inhumans and then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I think we plan on doing Runaways and Cloak and Dagger and New Warriors as those come out as well. So that'll be back to our usual kind of news review and main discussion that we usually do. I hope you guys have a good week, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.